A good tavach. Today's daf is daf lamed tes. We're going to start by doing a quick review of daf lamed ches, and then we're going to start. We learned a lot about hilchos avodim. We had a machloikis if it's mutter to free an eved, even if you hold you're not allowed to free an eved. For a mitzvah, you are allowed to free an eved. And we had a machloikis between Rabbi Yochanan and Shmuel, or Rabbi Yochanan said that if someone is mafkir his eved, the eved goes lecheres, but that only takes care of the choshen mishpat ownership of the eved. But in order for the eved to be able to marry a Yisraelis, to take away his Yisrael heter status of an eved, it requires a get shikhr. Shmuel, on the other hand, says once someone's mafkir his eved, he darshans from the pasuk eved ish, that if a person does not have a financial ownership of an eved, who adin, the eved loses his complete status of an eved, even for Yisrael heter, and therefore no get shikhr will be required. And this is going to be very much the focus of today's Gemara. So we started a Gemara on Lamed Chesem and Beis on Friday, and let's go start through it again so that we can learn the whole topic as a whole. Omar Rav, Hamafkir Abdoi. Oh, we have to go a little bit weiter. Omar Rav, Hamakdish Abdoi Yotzel Lecheres. Someone who's makdish is eved, he says Harei hu hektish, Harei ato hektish. That means that he's making him free. Because using a process of elimination, we can try to figure out what was meant by those words. My time, Gufa Lekodesh. She surely couldn't have meant to be makdish to Gufa Eved, because you cannot be makdish to Gufa Eved. The only type of guf that can become kadosh is the guf of a behemoth Torah that's ready to be brought as a korban. The Dami Lekamer, he didn't say, I want to donate the value of my Eved to Hektish. He said the Eved should be Hektish. So what it must mean is, Am Kadosh. He must have meant that he should become a member of the Am Kadosh, he should become a member of Klal Yisrael. Rabbi Yosef says in the name of Rav, that Hamafkir Abdu Yotzel Lecheres. If you're mafkir your Eved, then he goes free. Man the Omer Makdish, if you hold even Makdish goes lecheros, goes to get mafkid. But man the Omer Makdish, Avol Makdish loy. By if someone says Arezu Hektish, maybe it doesn't mean that you become an Am Kodesh. Maybe it still means Dilma the Dmeika. Maybe he meant just to be Makdish the worth of it. Iboilahu. The Gemara has a shayla. Sorach et shichur eins or loitza. Whether you're mafkir or makdish and eved, if it goes free, do you also require a get shikhr or not? Which is exactly the shayla that we had between Rabbi Yochanan and Shmuel in the last couple of letters. Touchma. It doesn't matter if you're makdish and eved or if you're mafkir and eved, regardless, yotza lecheres. Eved goes free, the tzarech get shikhr, and you still require to write a get shikhr for the itzer v'heter portion of it. Omar Rava said, "Umasvinon ashmaitzit." This halacha that I'm telling you, that hamafkir avdoi yotza lecheros and needs to get shikhr, I'm going to ask a kash on it. To be clear, this halacha of a makdish rabbi, a makdish avdoi, we're learning now that when someone is makdish as eved, he says Arezu kodesh, it means that you should become a member of Am Kadosh, you should go free. We're going to bring a raya that if someone is makdish as eved, it actually makes his eved kodesh, and it makes the value of his eved meshubah to hektish. Where do we see that? From the following brayse: Hamakdish nechasav. If somebody is makdish, his nechasim vayu ben avodim, and amongst the nechasim were avodim. So he was makdish avodim. So the brayse starts giving us details as to what halach is. Einag gizborin reshoyin loyitzin lecheres. The gizborin cannot free this eved because they don't own the gufa eved. They just were promised the value of the eved. So what could they do in order to extract their cash value from the eved? Aval moichin loyitzin lacher. They could sell this cash value to a third party. The third party will own the eved with the kinyan guf. Hektish cannot own the eved kinyan guf, but a third party who buys it is allowed to own the eved kinyan guf, and therefore and the Acherim will be able to free. So before we even get into the details, right off the bat, you see the Brisa clearly says that when you're Makdash an Evet, it becomes Kodesh. According to what we said from Rav, if you're Makdash an Evet, it won't become Kodesh at all. It'll just become free, because you don't even mean Ekdesh. You mean making him part of an Am Kodesh. So that's going to be the Gemara's question. Rebbe says, Omer Ani, I say, and Omer Ani, the Mefarshim tell us, is like the current day, Nira Lafiani is type. It's a humble way of expressing one's opinion. Ad kedei kach, but in the Soita, the Gemara says, Omer Rebbe, Al Tomer Anova, the Ika Anov. So Pasuk Drat is, because I'm an Anov. But there are those who learn the Ika Anov, it's the fact that I express myself using the word Omer Ani, because that shows humility. It's not so reassured. It's not so confident. So what does Rebbe say? Afu noisin d'mayatzmoi v'yotzei. The Eved himself could get money if someone gives him money. And then the Eved could redeem himself from Hektish, and then he'll go free. Because it's just as if the Hektish is selling his Shabbos to himself. The same way Hektish could sell it to a third party, they could sell it to him as well. And Rashi speaks out, they just have to make clear during the transaction that he's not being paid to himself, he's not being mishacher himself, he's simply buying himself like a third party would be. So I'll call upon him, you have a raya from this Mishnah that in fact Hamakish Avdo becomes Hektish. It's not Yotzel L'Cheres. So it's Shver on Rav. Zok to Gemara, Mas Nisin Karomas Alei de Rav. You're asking a kasha from a Mishnah on Rav? Rav Tana Hu Polit. Rav can argue with the Mishnah. Tashma. The Gemara brings another raya. It says in the pasuk Ach Kol Cherem, and it's talking about Cherem which people are donating to Hektish. The pasuk says Ach Kol Cherem Asher Yechram Ish Lashem Mikol Asher Loi. Someone could donate to Hektish from whatever he owns, even by Adam. He could even donate an Adam. What does it mean he could donate an Adam? Zok the Breitzer. My Adam Elu Avodav B'Shevchosh Avaknan. So you see clearly, someone can be Makdish of Adam. A raise or Hektish, it makes him Hektish, it doesn't make him free. Again, the Kasha on Rav. Now, this already is a bigger Kasha on Rav, because this is not just a Rav from a Breitzer. The Pasuk seems to say that. Zok the Gemara, the Pasuk doesn't necessarily mean when someone said a raise or Hektish. Maybe the Pasuk is speaking about a case where someone said, a guy said beferish, I want to be makdish the value of my avodim. That for sure is being makdish. Frankly, Gemara, if you could interpret this brisa that it's talking about a case where a person didn't say about his eved raise hektish, rather he said dam of a lie, well then why didn't the Gemara answer that in the previous kasha with the case of the Gizbarim? Why did the Gemara have to say Rav argues on the Mishnah? Why don't we say that case that's talking about Enak Gizbarim Rishoyin is also speaking where someone said damei a lie? Dr. Gemara, no, that wouldn't be possible. But the Hachi, if the freedom case is also talking about when someone just was machayev himself a certain amount of money based on the value of his eved, what does the Brisa mean when it says Enak Gizbarim Rishoyin Laitzir L'Cheres? They don't have, if I'm just donating the value of the eved to Hektish, they have no ownership, no control over the eved at all. They're just a donation. So how could the Brisa say that the Gizbarim can't free him? Of course they can't free him. They don't have any shayach with him. He was never donated. Gizbarim Hayaviditayu. Visu, the Mishnah, the Brisa also says, Aval Moichin Oisin Lacher. They could sell them to third parties. V'acher Maitin Oisin Lacheres. How could an Acher buy this? It's not Hektish to sell. Visu, if you look at the Sefer, Rabbi Omer Ani, Apu Noisin Demeyatzmoi B'Yotzei, Mishum Shu Kamoichloi. Once again, what do you mean selling? Hektish doesn't own the Zevit. It's just a pledge to give a certain amount of money. Vila Demei, Mai Mipnei Shu Kamoichloi. So that, for emperors, these two brises, the first brisa, which is speaking about literally being makdish or eved, the Gemara says Rav Tanahu Polig. The pasuk that talks about the makdish and eved, we can explain it means when someone just said, "I want to donate. I'm pledging the value of my eved to Hektish." Tashma. Let's try another kash. A makdish avdo. If someone is makdish his own eved, even though it's kadosh, oitze ba'oichel, you still get to keep the Maisi Daim of the Eved. If the Eved works, the Adam still gets to keep it. He's only being makdish the value of the Eved. So once again, you see if someone says Arezu Hektish, once again, you see that the Eved becomes Hektish, and it's Shver on Rav, who says the Eved goes free. So let's turn over now onto Daf Lamed Tes Amud Aleph, which is today's Daf. Zog to Gemara, how many Reb Meir he? Let's say that this price is going according to Reb Meir. Until now, we were taking the approach that you have to translate, interpret what a person said, that it should fit into his words. So if he said Arezu Kadosh, it has to mean Arezu Kadosh. So either it means he should go free, so you become part of an Am Kadosh, or it means he should be Hektish, and you could maybe stretch it to say L'Dmei Hektish. Now we're opening up a new possibility where you can even interpret someone's words to mean something that he didn't even say. Hamani Reb Meir. This might be going with the sheet of Reb Meir. The Amar Ein Adam Moitzi Duvar V'Levatol. Reb Meir holds that when someone says something, even if it doesn't make sense, he definitely meant to do something that makes sense. He just expressed it wrong. So therefore, we'll actually modify our understanding of his words, even though they don't fit into what he said, and we will say that that's what he means to say. For instance, we know there's a halacha of erechin. Erechin is, if you say the erech of a certain person is upon me, the Torah has a prescribed amount that you have to give to hektish. But the minimum age of a person who the Torah gives a prescribed amount for is 30 days. If you are going to be ma'arich a child and say erechi alai, or erech this baby alai, and the baby is not 30 days old, there's no such erechin for that. Torah doesn't talk about that. But if someone says erech yeled ze alai, that means he's speaking nonsense. Or Meir says people don't speak nonsense. What he must have meant was just dom of alai. I want to give the value of this baby to the Beis Hamikdash. So even though we're explaining and translating and interpreting his words to mean something that he did not say, since we have the overarching rule of Eino Demoichi Devar V'Levatala, we will be creative about what he possibly meant. So Zok Gemara, once you have a mayor, that's a license to interpret anything. So therefore, Avada normally, if you don't hold a mayor, it has to mean he goes free. According to a mayor, all bets are off. The mayor holds that even though he said this should be hektish and it cannot be hektish, we'll fatach you that I mean to the make. Hakinami mistaver. It's actually mistaver to say that the brisa that we just quoted is going according to a mayor. The Ketani Seifa, because the brisa continues and says as follows: a person who is makdish himself, he still gets to keep whatever he produces. He's only being makdish his value. So think about this. If this brisa is following Reb Meir's shita, where you could loosely change what he said to make it make sense, Shapir, then you'll say what he meant was I just wanted to donate a certain value of money. If you're going to Rabbanon, Avdai, you might be able to interpret and say it's for the Meikoi. When he said Eved Zeh Yeh Kadosh, he could have meant the Meikoi. Could be, you could say that. The Meikoi, he's not an Eved, and the Eved has a valuation. He's a Yisrael. He doesn't have any valuation to be sold because people aren't sold. So therefore, it only makes sense to say that he meant to be makdish the value if you're going to very loosely translate what he said, and we'll say he meant to give a certain amount of money to hektish, even though he didn't say that at all. So we have this machlokes as to whether or not makdish avdoi, if it's kadosh or not. So we had Rav who said it's kadosh. I'm sorry, we had Rav who said it's not kadosh, it's free. But we had Shita who says it was kadosh and it's not free, and we've tried bringing rice, but we didn't succeed. So now the Gemara wants to suggest maybe this is in fact a machlokes tonight. Hamakdish avdoi ein moyalabod. If you're makdish your eved, you're not moyal, which would indicate that it's not kadosh, because normally hektish you're moyal. So it seems to be saying, if Tanakama seems to be saying that if you're makish or evet, it doesn't become kadosh, meaning it goes free. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, my alan b'sayir, you're moil in its hair. So you see, you could be moil in evet. Why did it pick dafka hair? The Gemara is going to get to that. But you see, you could be moil. So maybe this is a machlokes. My labaka mivuki. March over kadosh. March over like kadosh. There's a machlokes whether or not you could be makish or evet. Frank Gemara, it is broad. Is that what you think? If the machlokes was whether or not you could be makish to evet, then why are we describing the machlokes about the me'ilah? Hi, my alamboy, ve'im my alamboy. That's not what the discussion of the brisa should be. The discussion should be hi kadosh, ve'im kadosh me'boyim. The machlokes should be Talakama says it's not kadosh, and the Shimon Gamliel says it is kadosh. Why are they talking about me'ilah? Why don't you speak about the subject that we're really arguing about? Why beat around the bush? Ella, it must be the chula alma. Everybody must hold that avada you could be makish and evet, which is not like Rav. And you're going to have to explain this machlokes differently. The ma'asav are avda k'mekarka dami. The Tanakama hold evet is like karka, and karka you never moil in. U'ma'asav k'metaltla dami, and Shimon ben Gamliel holds that evet is like metaltlin, and therefore you could be moil in that. Correct, Gemara. If that's the case, it's still difficult. Why is Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel only saying that you're moil in the hair? If evet is k'metaltli, any part of the evet that you benefit from should be me'ilah. Why is the discussion limited to the hair of the evet? Therefore, Dr. Gemara, it's a whole different shayla. Everybody else avda k'mekarki, and therefore there's no me'ilah on any part of the evet, except for hair. The discussion is if you have long hair and you're ready to take a haircut, you're due or overdue for a haircut, that hair is going to be cut. Do we consider that mechuber and therefore it's karka, or do we consider it already severed and therefore it's metaltlin and therefore you'll be moil if you have enough of the hair? My shaver kagazu dummy. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says the hair is like it's cut and therefore moil alan beside, right? My shaver the Tanakama holds lav kagazu dummy and therefore there's no me'ilah. So now we've moved to a different direction. This is no longer a discussion of if you're makish and evet, if it becomes kadosh. Now we have a new discussion. Something that's about to be cut, do we perceive it as if it's cut already or not? Halachically, do we treat it like it's cut already or not? Zok the Gemara, we have another machlokes tanoim that has the same subject when it's talking about fruit on a tree that are about to be cut. Are they considered mechuber or are they considered gazos? Let's say that this question of whether or not something that's ready to be cut is considered cut already will be told in another machlokes between Rav Meir and the Chacham. Rav Meir said, Yesh devarim shem kekarka ve'enim kekarka. There are things that are like karka, but they have a halachos as if they're not karka. Ve'ein chachamim mo'ilno. But the Chachamim disagree. Ketzad, what was the case? Ether gefanim tu'unus mishayko. We know there's a halacha. If you give a shomer $1,000 to watch for you, and then when you come pick it up, you say, okay, may I please have my $1,000? And the shomer says, $1,000? You only gave me $500, not $1,000. So that's the moed mixus. That's the mechuyev of a shvua. But you only make a shvua on the taltlin. You don't make a shvua on karka. And here what happened is the shomer said, Eser, the mafkid, the Baal said, Eser gefanim to unois masaytilach. I give you over to watch 10 fully grown vines that have a full load, a full yield of grapes on them, ready to be harvested. And the shomer said, I don't think so. I only had 5. So the question is the shomer mechuyev to make a shvua? Rav Meir mechayev. Rav Meir holds it's hard to make a shvua because this is considered metaltlin, because kol oimedli kotzeitz kikotzetz dami. The fact is, it's still hanging on the tree. It's considered mechuber, no shvua. The discussion is by grapes that are fully grown, ripened, and ready to be harvested. Rav Meir savar kivitzuris dami. Rav Meir holds it's as if they're cut already, similar to Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, who said that the hair that's ready to be cut is considered cut already. Rabbanan savar lav kivitzuris dami. The Rabbanan hold no. The fact is they're still on the tree, even though they're ready to be cut. They're not cut. They're considered mechuber. And the same thing with the evet hair, it's mechuber. Zoktamar, no, not necessarily are these machlokes totally the evet. Even Reb Meir over here, who holds that the pairs are considered cut already, might hold by the hair that the hair is not considered cut. And why is that? Where did Reb Meir say we consider it cut? Grapes. You know why? Because the kaimin remaining on the vine is detrimental to the grapes. So you got to get them off quickly so that they shouldn't become over-ripened. And therefore, it's considered cut. The longer the hair grows, the better the hair is. So therefore, there's nothing pressing us to cut that hair right away. As Rashi says, we're not going to consider it cut. The hair still needs to be connected to the scalp because it's continuing to grow beautiful locks. And therefore, lav dafka is that considered kigazut. Zok to Gemara weiter. Kisaluk Rab Chia bar Yosef. When Rab Chia bar Yosef went up there to Yisrael, Amar lahai shmaitzed the Rav kamed Rabbi Yochanan. He said over Rav's halacha that hamafkir abdoi yotzal lecheres. Amar lei. So Rabbi Yochanan responded, Amar Rav hachi. Did Rav actually say that hamafkir abdoi yotzal lecheres? Frankly, Gemara, why would Rabbi Yochanan be surprised? He himself says the same thing. But who loy Amar hachi? Didn't Rabbi Yochanan say the same halacha? The Amar Ulu Amar Rabbi Yochanan hamafkir abdoi yotzal lecheres v'tzorach get shikr. So why was Rabbi Yochanan surprised that Rav said the same thing? This is what he meant. Rav Kavasi. He wasn't questioning, is it possible that Rav said that? It's a crazy shita. No, I agree, it's right. I agree with it. I'm just surprised that Rav said the same halacha as I did. But the Igadamri, there's another version of how to understand why Rabbi Yochanan was questioning, did Rav actually say this? I don't believe it. Because Loi Saimua Kameh, they didn't finish all of Rav's words. Amalei, what is it? No, they said Rav said the Mafrav Yotz Lecheres, but the suffix is Vitzarech get Shichur is what they omitted. Rabbi Yochanan holds that even though it's Yotz Lecheres, but you still have to give a get Shichur to deal with the Yoredata part, to deal with the Isav Heter, to allow this Evan to become a full Yid to marry a Bas Yisrael. That was omitted when they delivered this information to Rabbi Yochanan. Amalei, and therefore he said, didn't Rav say that you also need to get shikr? And that's why Rabbi Yochanan was questioning the delivery of this halacha from Rav. Rabbi Yochanan follows his own shita. If someone is mafker his evet, Taki goes free, but he still needs to get shikr to deal with the Isra Beheter, to be matter the evet to marry a Bas Yisrael. Gufa. Amar Ulam Rabbi Yochanan. Hamafker Abda Yotzal Lecheres v'Tzorach Ketchim. Ein Tzvei Rab Abba Ulam. Rab Abba asked Akash Adula, you're quoting from Rabbi Yochanan that you need to get shikhr. I'm going to prove to you that you don't need to get shikhr. Ger Shemeis. We know if a ger dies, a ger has no yarshim. So all of his assets are up for grabs at first come, first serve. So Ubizbazu Yisrael Nechasav. The vultures came and raided all his Nechasim, took him. And amongst his nechasim were Eved Kanainis. Ben Gedolim Ben Katan. It doesn't matter if they were adults or if they're minors. Kanu Atman. They chop themselves before anybody has a chance to chop them. So they're automatically freed. And they can go marry regular Jewish women. Kanu Atman B'nei Chayr. But Abishol argues, Gedolim Kanu Atman B'nei Chayr. An adult can be kind of thing. So therefore, they go free. But Katanim, they cannot be kind of themselves. So they're in limbo. And therefore, if anybody seizes them, they will be kind to them. Because they are not able to get into their own rishon. So the question is, you, Rabbi Yochanan, hold that if you're mafka your Eved, he still is not a ben Karen. He still needs a get. Who wrote a get shikhr to these avodim? Their owner, the ger, died already. And someone being zoich, and if they're zoich in themselves, how do they get a get shikra? Maybe they dealt with the choshev mishpat part; they now belong to themselves, but there's still isser heter on them. They still have the status of an eved. How do they get rid of that? According to you, Rabbi Yochanan will hold that that's required. Omar, so Ula said that's a kasha. That's not a kasha. That's an amateur kasha. Dami Haimi de Rabbanon, you, Rab Abba, who's asking me this kasha, it's like you never learned in yeshiva. It's like you don't know how to learn. It's bullshit. That this case is different because the other died. The time of my Amar Rab Nachman, Katsavar Ula holds, Avdoi de Ger, Piishta. Evan of a ger is just like an isha. My isha mishtalcha below get, just like a woman who's free. The introvert heter connection. There is no monistic connection. A husband doesn't own his wife. There's only an introvert heter connection, and that this gets discharged when the husband dies. So af avadav mishtalcha below get. So too the Yorevidea, the introvert heter portion of the ownership of the evet, that becomes automatically discharged with the death of the ger. So sure, normally if you're mafker, you're evident, you're still alive, you still need to sever the yaredeh, the Yitzhak, you got to get shikra. But here that the Adon died, if the Adon died, so that Yitzhak is severed because of the death. And where do you see death severs? A relationship of Yitzhak, you see it by get Isha. Furthermore, if that's the case, Yisrael Nami. Every time a Yisrael dies, the Evet should go free because there's that Isra Heter that can discharge. Omar Kra, Zok the Pasuk, no. The son yarshins the monistic din of the Evet, and therefore he also took over the Isra Heter din, and therefore the Misa won't discharge that because the Torah says that the ownership of the Evet transfers to the next of kin. Frag the Gemara, if that's the case, what about in the following case? What if someone's a mafker abdoi? So if he's mafker abdoi, now his children are not going to be archening, umeins, and then he died. Nami, there as well, you should not require a get shikr according to your logic, because the mominus was taken care of with the hefker, and the Yishuv Heter was taken care of with the misa. Alam Omar Amemar, why did Amemar say that a mafker abdoi umeis oisei even eloi takana? Amemar holds that you still need a get, and he can't get a get because there's no one to give him a get. So he's stuck, he cannot marry anybody. But according to the way you're explaining it, that misa discharges, what's the shot of the Amemar? Zoktimar, Enechanami, the Amemar Kasha. Amemar is difficult to understand. So Shver and Amemar, how would he understand everything? Amr Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi, Amr Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Halacha Abishol. The halacha is like Abishol that a katan, an evet katan, cannot be koine himself. As an aside, Tosfos speaks out. What do you mean a katan can't be koine? Isn't there a rule that on the first day Sukkot you're not supposed to be makne your arba minim to a katan before you are yoytze because he won't be able to give it back to you? So obviously a katan could be koine. So Tosfos says yes, with das acheres makne, the katan could be koine. If you're being makna your lulav and esrogim, yes, then he could be koine. But to be koine by himself from hefker, where there's no dasacheres pushing it to him, that he cannot be koine. So Rabbi Shua ben Levi paskin like Avashol that a katan cannot be zoichet himself. That's what Rabbi Shua ben Levi said. So Amalei Rabbi Zeir Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi. Rabbi Zeir asked Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi, did Rabbi Shua ben Levi say outright halacha Avashol? Or maybe he paskin something or he said something, and from what he said, you figured out that he would hold a kabashol. What is it? Turning over onto Amud Beis. Is it beferish itmar? Did he tell it to you beferish shmilach? If Shua ben Levi said outright, I paskin like kabashol, I'm a klola shmilach. For my klola, if it is a klala, if it was a diak, what are you referring to? What is the diak that you're referring to that would have revealed that Rabbi Shua ben Levi passes like Abishol? To Amr Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Amr Lefnei Rebbe. Someone asked Rebbe the following question: Amar nisiyashti mipleni avdi. If someone says I was miyayish for my ebed, which Rashi interprets as being mafkir. So what if someone is mafkir his ebed? This is the big question that we've been discussing all along. Somebody who's mafkir his eved, what is the status of this eved? Omer lahem, Rebbe answered, Oiverani, once again in this humble fashion, ein loy takana. This eved is stuck. because he doesn't have anybody to give him a get. Rashi says, he could not marry a Bas Yisrael. He cannot marry a Shivcha either. He's somewhat freed. So, unless of course he gets a star. Unless his Adon gives him a get Shivcha. My time with the Rebbe. Rabbi Yochanan said, what is the reason for Rebbe? And we know Rabbi Yochanan holds like this, that you need to get Shivcha. Gomar lo meisha. We learn Gittin, where it says law, the chos of law sefer krisos, from the star shikhr of a shikha knainis, where it says like chub shel nitan law, and we compare the halachas that you find begerishin to apply to sending away an eved. Ma isha b'shtar, just like an isha. How do we discharge the isur v'heter bond with ishtar, with a get? Eved nami b'shtar. So too, an eved, how do you discharge an eved? With a star. So that was the limud that Rabbi quoted. But now that we see that Rabbi Yochanan quoted this limud and compares Isha to Amma, well, let's see if we can learn more information from Isha to Shivcha Knainis. The Kadakis Mina ki Isha. Ma Isha Isura v'lei mamana, just like an Isha. The get has no power to destroy a financial bond. It only destroys a bond of Isha v'heter when there is no financial bond. Avevet, so to an Eved Nami, Isura v'lei mamana. When will the get be effective? If there's no financial bond, meaning the Eved was cutting himself already. But if the Eved wasn't cutting himself already, like a katan, the star shikhr wouldn't work. So this seems to support Abishol. And maybe this is how we understood that Rabbi Shuvah Levi paskins like Abishol, that the katan, the get won't work for him. Zok Gemara, the imach, it sounds like a pretty good deal. So why were you so interested to know if Rabbi Shuvah Levi paskined outright like Abishol, or if we only figured it out from a deal? Either way, it's a pretty good raya. Dr. Gemara, no, you don't have a raya at all. I can look at Isha and come to a completely different conclusion. And I can say as follows. Ma'isha ben gedola ben katana, just like the get works to discharge the relationship of a marriage, whether the Isha is an adult or whether the Isha is a minor, so too a get will be effective in discharging the relationship. Nami ben gadol ben katan will also be able to discharge the relationship of a katan. So obviously the katan could be kind of himself. So this would be a raya against Abishol. So therefore, from this story, from this discussion, we don't garner any information about what Rabbi Shuvah Levi holds about the Machlekes Abishol and the Rabbanon, because it could really go both ways. Therefore, Amalei, he answered Beferish Mili. No, I heard Rabbi Shuvah Levi say black and white outright at Paskin like Abishol. That's how I knew, because in fact, I wouldn't have a raya from any other thing that he said. Rabbi Abba Amar Rabbi Yochanan quoted Rabbi Shuvah Levi saying exactly the opposite. Ein halacha Abishol. The halacha not like Abishol. And in fact, the cotton could be Kanye himself. Amal Reb Zera, Rabbi Abba, exactly the same shakal taya, but starting from the other side. The fair shmir lach, I'm a klola shmir. My klola, what would be the deal? Amar Rabbi Shuvah Levi, Amar Lufnei Rabbi, to say Ashti mi plani abdi mahu. Amalehem, Aymarni, Ein le takana le b'shtar. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, my time with the Rabbi, Gomer lo la isha. Maisha b'shtar, I've had a dami b'shtar. The Kadakas we know what the dik that we're going to make. Isha, Maisha ben gedol ben katana, I've had a dami ben gadol ben katan. So you see clearly from this dik that even a katan can be discharged with the get, meaning he can be kind himself. The imach lalamai, and big deal. So what's if we know it's from a dik? So tomorrow other don't know hakisa. It's because, as we looked earlier, there's a completely different perspective as to how to interpret the limud from Isha. And you could say, Ma'isha Yisur v'limamana, Avevid Nami Yisur v'limamana, and therefore a katan would not be able to go. Therefore he answered, Amalei beferish mili. I heard him say beferish, I passed like the Rabbanim. Period. Zok the next tomorrow. Amar Amar Lahem, Rebbe responded to their shaila, and he said, "Oymarni ein lo takana ela b'shtar." So what was this talking about? We were talking about somebody who's makdish his avodim, and the Tanakama. Let's have a look back at what the Tanakama said. Let's go back to Amar Aleph. Oh, I'm sorry. It was actually Lamed Ches Amud Beis. So let me get there. Okay, Zok Tehillah Gemara. The bottom of Lamed Ches Amud Beis, when the Gemara was trying to be right that Makdish Avdoi becomes Kodesh, Rebbe made a comment, and the Rebbe said, the case was Einag is born Rishon Lachin Lacheres of a Merchanish Lacherem. Rebbe Omer Ani. Oh no, this is not the Rebbe that I was talking about. I'm talking about the Get Shicher. Over here it is. No, it's not her either. I apologize. So it's a different Rebbe. It's a different Rebbe because it's Rebbe who says you need to get Shicher. So I am mistaken. I apologize. So let's go back to where we're holding. Zog to Gemara. Rebbe said, Omer Ani, Omer Mar, Omer Lahem, Omer Ani, Ein Lo Takana Ela B'Shtar. His only option is with a star. That's right over here on top of it. And I was running around to the wrong blot. It's right over here on top. Right? Omer Lefnei Rebbe, Omer Neshiyashim Planyati, Mao, Omer Lahem, Omer Ani, Ein Lo Takana Ela B'Shtar. It's right there. I don't know how I missed that. I apologize. So Zog to Gemara. Let's analyze this. Vatanya, how could you say that? Vatanya, we looked at the Brisa. Rebbe Omarani, Afu Noisen Demei Atzmoi V'Yotzei. That's the Rebbe that I'm talking about. This is the Rebbe that we learned on Lamed Ches on his base. Omarani, Afu Noisen Demei Atzmoi V'Yotzei. The Eved could redeem himself directly to Mekish because he'll buy himself like a third party could buy him. And there we see that he's redeeming himself, and there's no star necessary. So how could Rebbe say, even after he's kind himself, he still needs the star? Here you see when he buys himself, he doesn't need to get shichur. So Gemara, you're right. Of course, either way, independent of each other, will be a full shichur. If the Eved redeems himself, that's a full shichur. And if an Eved gets a get shichur, it's also a full shichur. It's a full shichur, so they're both fair methods to free an Eved. So Zog to Gemara, and let's look at Rashi. Oy b'ketzav oy b'shtar takanacha shel Eved. The Eved can have his takana of going free either with ketzav or with star. The iskish pidyon ketzav l'shtar, because the Torah puts them both together and creates a hekesh. So let's look at this pasuk because we're going to be analyzing this in great deal. We're talking about the case of Shivcha Charufa. If someone is boil a Shivcha Charufa, you have to bring an Asham. So we know if someone's boil an Ishish Ish, Chayv Misa. If someone's boil a Shivcha, no Chiv at all. But if someone's boil a Shivcha Charufa, he has to bring an Asham. What is a Shivcha Charufa? The definition of a Shivcha Charufa is a woman who was a Shivcha and she was freed. Half of her was freed. Half of her was freed, or even all of her was freed from a monistic perspective, but she didn't yet receive her get Shivcha. That's what this pasuk is talking about. So let's see the pasuk. And here's the hekesh that we're looking for. So you see the Torah is putting these two exits side by side, pigeon and star. So Zok to Gemara, in fact, Rebbe hold that either one is an effective way of the Eved becoming totally free. But that's if you're a full-blown Eved and you're part of yourself. But if the other was already mafkir you, If the Adam was already mafka you, you can no longer redeem yourself with mammon. By redeeming your mammon, you could discharge your abdus because of the hekesh. But here you cannot redeem yourself with mammon because you are already hefker. And therefore, your only option in this case is to use a get. This is not like another Tana who we're going to quote, who holds that pidyon does not free you. The only thing that frees you is a get. The Tanya Reb Shimon Omer Mishum Reb Akiva. Yochol ye ketzav goymer ba kaderech shishtar goymer ba. You might have thought that, in fact, if someone redeems themselves with ketzav, it also totally discharges the avdos, even the Yisrael portion. Hamad loymer v'havtala nitzvasa ura kol parsha kula lechupsa. The whole parsha is toilet in the get. And let's look at the pasuk inside to get a clear understanding. You look at the pasuk inside, it's discussing this woman who shivcha nechareves leish v'havte loy niftas. She wasn't fully redeemed. Oy chupshula nitul. So what the Gemara is telling us is that really, even though she's completely redeemed, she's still a shivcha charufa. And the most important factor here that makes her a shivcha charufa is the oy chupshula nitul. It says both. But if you look at the end of the pasuk, it says bikaris tia lo yumtzu ki lo chupasa. It says the reason why you don't get killed is because she didn't get her get shichur, and that's why she's not a total Yisrael. If through mammonis, through a redemption, she would also be completely discharged, then it should have said ki lo chupasa, and she wasn't nifta yet. But the fact that the Torah concludes saying only ki lo chupasa tells us that that's the only thing that makes her into a Bas Yisrael, which would make her no longer a Shivcha Charufa, who the resolution is to bring a Nosham. Rather, once she has her get Shichur, she's a total Bas Yisrael, and the person being Mezana with her would be Chayiv Misa. So Zok to Gemara. Talmud Lamer v'haptel nisvasa ura kol aparsha kula lo lechupsa. The end of the pasuk, which is the most important factor as to whether or not she's free or not, is totally in the loy chupsa, whether she got her get shich. Learn enough to teach you that shtar goymerba, the only thing that totally discharges their iser heter and makes her into a bas Yisrael is a get shicher. The ain't a kesef goymerba. Kesef would not be able to accomplish that. So you have a machlokes. Can an Eved redeem himself and become totally free, become a Yisrael, or will it only work if he gets a get shich? Omar Rami Bar Chama Rab Nachman Halachik Rab Shimon. Rami Bar Chama said in the name of Rab Nachman that the halacha like Rab Shimon that only get works, not kesef. Rabbi Yosy Bar Chama Omar Beichanan ain't halachik Rab Shimon. So we have over here a discrepancy. Do we hold like Rab Shimon or not? He mentioned he met Rabbi Bar Shilta, who was standing at the entrance of the basic Knesset. He asked him, "Halacha ain't halacha? Is the halacha like Rabbi Shimon or not?" He said, Rabbi Nachman Bar Yitzchak said, "Ani Omer ain't halacha. I think halacha is not like Rabbi Shimon, and kesef also works to discharge an avdos. But the Rabbanon, the Asuma Mechuza, Amri, they said differently. Amar Abzeir Mishmeid Rav Nachman, halacha." So now we have a discrepancy in what Rav Nachman himself said. Did Rav Nachman say halacha is like Rav Shimon, or did Rav Nachman say the halacha is not like Rav Shimon? V'chi asay l'sura, when I came to Surah, Ashkechei Rav Chia Bar Avin. I met Rav Chia Bar Avin. Amri, I told him, Emily easy gufa de uvda hechia. Tell me exactly the story. How could there be a discrepancy about what Rav Nachman said? Tell me what happened and how it led to a confusion in understanding what Rav Nachman meant. Amalai, I'll tell you the story. It just goes to show how easy it is to misunderstand things that you see with your own eyes and misunderstand them. There was this Amma, a Shivcha Knainis, her Adon was about to die. So she came pleading to her Adon. She cried to him. And the Amrle, she told him, Ad emas How long are you going to enslave me? Free me already. So he had Rachmanis. Shakal comes, he took his hat, Chadaba, he threw it at her. Amalai told her, Zil Kaniha, be kind to the hat, and while being kind to the hat, the Kani Navshak, you'll be kind to yourself. So let me ask you a question. When you sell chametz to the Rav is sort of buying the rights and you're giving them to him. Who lifts up the gartel? Who lifts up the handkerchief? You do. The matna is lifting up the handkerchief of the koina. So the koina provides the handkerchief, which the matna lifts up, and in lieu of that shmata that he lifted up, he's being makna to the koina. What happened over here? The makna's shmata was given to the koina, and she lifted it up. Does that work? I don't know. So that's what we're going to discuss right now. So this is what happened. After this happened, this Amma wanted to know, am I free or am I not free? Is what my Adon did, did it work? He freed me. Also, look, Nachman. They went to ask Rab Nachman this question. Amar Lahu, he told her, I'm sorry, ma'am, you are still a full-blown shivcha, so what is the reasoning? So that's all we heard Rab Nachman say, is that this woman is not a free woman. But the underlying reason, he didn't specify. So you might have wrongfully thought, someone who saw this might have wrongfully thought, that really it was a good momentous opinion. She was kind to herself back, but Reb Shimon holds, in order for it to be totally discharged, that she can marry a Yisrael, she needs to get shikra, and she didn't get it. And that's why Reb Nachman said, but Belay, you totally misunderstood the psak of Reb Nachman. El Mishum Dabalei Caleb Shalmakne. This Kinyan Chalipin doesn't work. The way it has to work is the Makna gives it to the Koine. She would have had to give him the hat to lift. And then through that, he would be Makna herself to herself. But that's not what happened. So Reb Nachman said, is because your whole Kinyan was never a valid Kinyan to begin with. And therefore, you don't have a raya that Reb Nachman passes like Reb Shimon. Maybe he passes like the Rabbana, like Rav, that if you redeem yourself with the Kinyan, Avada, you're completely free. But that's only if the Kinyan is valid. Amar Rab Shmuel bar Achisai, Amar Rab Nuna Saba, Amar Rab Yitzchak bar Ashia, Amar Rab Huna, Amar Rab Nuna. Halachic Rab Shimon. But V'lo Yizak the Gemara, Ein Halachic Rab Shimon. We don't pass like Rab Shimon. Baruch Hashem, we were Zoicha to finish the Achlamates of Gittin, and Be'ez Hashem tomorrow we will learn at 7 o'clock and at 9 o'clock we will learn Daf Mem. A good tavach, everybody. You should have a mazel, full of bracha and atzlacha.
Good tavach, shkoyach.